Hello to Twyla Hansen.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're just giving people a few minutes to get in from the waiting room here before we go ahead and get started, but we will get going here just shortly.
No.
Okay. Well, I will keep an eye on the waiting room so I can keep letting people in, but let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to this very special evening edition of our Plant Talks. I'm Hannah Pinio. I'm the Executive Director of Plant Nebraska, and tonight we have a plant talk with guest speakers Twyla Hansen and Victoria Bogatz. Twyla was the Nebraska State Poet from 2013 through 2018 and has conducted readings and creative writing workshops through the Humanities Nebraska Speakers Bureau since 1992. Her newest book of poetry, that includes a section of poems about the environment, Inventions of Love, will be published by WSC this fall. Four of her previous books have won Nebraska Book Awards. One has won the Willa Literary Award, and three books have been finalists for the Willa Literary Award. Victoria is an 18-year-old environmental activist, student journalist, and the current Nebraska Youth Poet Laureate. Her work has been honored by the Nebraska Scholastic Writing Awards, the Opera Omaha Poetry and Music Project, and the Bow Seat Ocean Awareness Contest, among others. She aims to use writing as a way to connect people from all backgrounds and initiate change. We're looking forward to Twyla and Victoria reading a selection of their poems and discussing how nature and Nebraska landscapes have inspired and influenced their work. But before we get to that, a couple of housekeeping notes for you all. Just a reminder that Plant Nebraska's tree planting, garden making, and environmental education outreach work is funded in part by memberships and donations from people like you. And we thank you to all of you who donated when you registered for this free webinar. If you're not already a member of Plant Nebraska, we would love for you to become one, and I will put a link in the chat where you can learn more about the different membership levels and the benefits. You can also go to our website, plantnebraska.org/join. We would also like to thank JEO Consulting for sponsoring this year's Winter Plant Talk series. Next week is our last plant talk of the series, and we will be back at noon Central next Thursday, March 5th, with Brad Kindler and Justin Evertson, who will be talking about herbicide injury to trees. You can register at plantnebraska.org. You can also watch recordings of all our plant talks from this year and years past on our YouTube channel just by searching Plant Nebraska. Also, remind you that Spring Affair preview party and sale tickets are available now. You can find out everything you need to know about Spring Affair on plantnebraska.org. And one last reminder to keep your microphone on mute for now. We'll open it up to questions for Twyla and Victoria at the end. You can also put them in the chat, and I will read them for them at the end. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and I will let Twyla and Victoria take it from here. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you for the introduction. I can start by reading a brief poem, and then I will let Twyla do a reading. This is one of my poems about the environment and climate change, and it's very near and dear to my heart. It's called How to Unburn the World. So I will get started. I grasp at the ghosts of my poetry, my fingers scorching like a prayer. The city of angels is burning 12,000 miles away, but I feel it here too. In this rainless Nebraska tundra, once disparate and now just as desperate. I watched notebooks pluming into orange, air dizzy with heat, sickly pages curling into one another like lost lovers. All the poetry is dead and red and burning alive, and I know the poets are next. Yet I keep writing because it's all I can do to cope, and as my pencil roves, lifting demons into the fabric of today, tomorrow, forever, I wonder, can poetry bring these ashes back to life? Can poetry unburn the world? Can my words be a phoenix, a resurrection, a retrieval, a return, a retinal redemption for this endlessly ending earth? Maybe if I put my life into this movement, this moment, maybe if I try hard enough and write fast enough, I can fix it. Or maybe the calamity of centuries worth of destruction will finally come to an end, and everything will be gone except a few final fires, a few ocean waves, and I won't have to save the world anymore. Instead, I'll go skinny dipping on Saturdays and laugh like my life depends on it. I'll stare up at clear skies and smile and cry and lie until I die. Eventually, my hands will become starched with sand, my face soggy with salt. I, like everything, will return to the earth. And the plastic will fade, the greenhouse will cool, the ashes will rise, and I know it's foolish, but I can't help but hope that the end will be the beginning. So that is my poem. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Exciting.
So, Twyla, are you going to read now?
I am. I have several poems, but I'll just read this one first. It's called Song of the Bumblebee. Over the city streets, over the houses and parks and towering oaks, over the manicured golf courses and mowed lawns and dry ditches, along trails in wooded areas with moist leaves, they navigate past chemicalized lawns and sterile crop fields and fussy flower beds to where the wildflowers grow. Under the sun, they hum and buzz the hot breeze through the weed patches in the backyards, forage for their gold bounty, the yellow pollen prize. After the ground warms, after they emerge, hauling their paddle baskets, sporting their yellow-black stripes and electric antennae, they ripple the airwaves in a single yet communal purpose, past greenery, brush, and scorched parking lots. In their muscled wings and robust thorax, they search furiously well into fall for nectar, for egg laying, for survival in dirt houses all winter. Thank you.
That was lovely.
Thank you. So that was, I'm really fond of bumblebees, and they're just so cool, and they're singular, but they really have a purpose, and they're great pollinators. So I respect them a lot. So anyway, I've always wanted to write about them, so it is. This, by the way, is from my new collection of poems, which will be out this fall, maybe early as October. So I'm pretty excited about it. Anyway, but I want to ask Victoria a question. What are the duties of the Nebraska Youth Poet Laureate, if anything?
Well, there's a lot for sure. I do a lot of civic engagement work. That is a big part of the role. And right now I'm planning a series of native gardening workshops. So teaching people how they can garden with more native plants that were originally here when Nebraska was still prairie, and how that helps the environment. And so those series are still happening. There's two more. And if anyone's interested, you're welcome to go to my social media, Victoria Bogatz, and look into those. But I've also been doing a lot of readings. That's a big part of the role, such as this one. I've read at lots of other events and just trying to get poetry out there and to become more part of the state and more accessible for young people. And I also have been, compiling a chapbook of all my best poems, and that's set to be published through the Nebraska Writers Collective Press this spring. So very exciting. The poem I just read, How to Unburn the World, will be in that book. So yeah, like Twyla said, I'm super excited about my upcoming book. Twyla, can I ask you, what were the duties of your time as state poet, and what did you do for that? What did you learn from it?
Yeah, well, I have a card. My card says what the duties are. The state poet promotes and encourages appreciation of poetry and literary life in Nebraska while inspiring an emerging generation of new writers. So it's wide open, and the reality of the job was, which I was privileged to accept, was that I traveled the state, crisscrossed it many, many times, up, down, all around. I went to every corner of state giving presentations and readings and workshops. And I met with libraries, churches, community groups, book clubs, and it was through Humanities Nebraska mostly, but not all of it. So I also blurbed about a dozen poets books that were coming out, and I love to do that. I had people do it for me, and now it's my turn to do it for them. And I have that title on the end of my name, so I'll always be and you will be the Youth Poet Laureate for the year's yours, but I'll always be the State Poet 2013, 2018. Thanks for asking.
That's incredible. I think we can both agree that these are great roles and they allow us to connect with like people from all across the state, which is just amazing.
Yes. And I think it's really important for youth to be involved because, my generation is, well, we were part of the problem, right? All the pollution, and we didn't get it stopped, and then climate change, and it's very scary, so.
Yeah. Speaking of like climate change and, things like that, I think our poems kind of talked about both the appreciation for nature and concern for the future of the natural world. So I wanted to ask, do you ever use poetry to advocate for the natural world? And if so, how?
Right. So yeah, well, one thing I'm doing is I'm writing these poems that talk about the effect of climate change. But I'm also an activist, and I've been calling the Nebraska DC delegation, and I've been advocating for the environment there. I don't send them my poems, but you can only talk about one subject at a time. But I've been doing this for over a year now, every week. So it's important work, and I'm glad to do it. I mean, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't try something,
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. Like with just the love of nature that we have in our poems, we kind of feel obligated to protect it.
Exactly. So, what should we read more poems, or you don't have another one, or you do?
I do actually, it's not my poem, but it's a poem I love. It's by another author. So I'd be happy to read if you want to also read another poem.
Sure.
Okay, I can start. This poem is called The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her work. She was a very prolific poet and excellent nature writer. So this is one of my favorite poems of all time, and I think it does a great job just appreciating nature. Okay. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? this grasshopper. I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So yes, that's Mary Oliver's lovely poem.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you start with spoken word, perform, slam poetry? I think those things are interconnected or the same thing. You might want to explain that to the audience.
Yeah, spoken word is performance, like it's just generally reading your poems out loud. But slam poetry is a bit more specific, I would say. It involves like certain types of poems, usually a bit longer, like written specifically to be performed and not necessarily for the page. And personally, performance poetry is a fairly new thing to me. I am used to page poems. I didn't start doing a lot of public readings until I became Youth Poet Laureate, but it's something that I think is really important to help get your poems out there and get just your message out there and start discussions about poetry. And also, I think performance poetry can be incredibly moving. So, what I've done as I've gotten more involved in it, I've gone to poetry slams. There's poetry slams in, Omaha and Lincoln and even in other places across the state, I believe. So I go to some of those and watch like more seasoned performers and learn from them and think about how I can transfer my words into a performance. So yeah, Twyla, have you done a lot of performance poetry over your life, or how has that worked out for you?
No, I'm not a performance poem. I can't memorize poems. And when you have to get up in front of the, judge or whatever, I have judged them. That's fun. That's always fun. But no, I haven't done that.
Yeah.
And I don't plan to.
Yeah, I feel that. But yeah, I admire the poets who are just built for this stage. Like watching performance poets really put their words out there is awesome.
Yeah, and my high school, Lincoln High School in Lincoln, was the first to give an academic letter for slam poetry.
Wow.
In the country. It was amazing. Well, they do a great job in the schools. And by the way, this took fire in all the schools across Nebraska, and there are teams competing with each other. And I don't know if you've been to any of the slams that they have in the schools, but they're just amazing.
Yeah. I believe All Rights Reserved, which is the big school slam poetry festival, is coming up this spring. So
yeah, it's fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. Twyla, do you want to read another poem?
Sure.
All
I
right.
have several. Let me read I'll read a couple short ones, if you don't mind. Just a sec, hold on.
Take your time.
Okay, one's called King Corn.
Ooh.
Not to be confused with King Kong, the wandering hulk that dominated an island where oil bigwigs swallowed natural resources for personal gain. Is that so different from now, here, where corn is king and the actions of land operators push the limits of nature to fatten their ledgers? We distance our daily lives from nature, demand cheap food, shut out reality on the ground. Monsters now command our fields.
That hit for sure.
I don't know if you've driven across Nebraska, but it's either corn or soybean. And the biodiversity in this state is just, I mean, they plowed up prairies, to plant corn. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. World on fire. The heap of fence-lined trees awaits a torch beside the farm road in an harvested field, allowing the producer to expand row crop, further alter the green haven for wildlife, and allow winds to disperse the topsoil tier. Our original landscape is but an antiquated memory, as current farming practices entitle us to ignore the decades of loss, turn our attention inward to grow, grow, grow at any cost. The future be damned. Our grandkids don't deserve this. Let's labor hard not to boss our watery globe. Let's help it bloom.
I wholeheartedly agree.
There's one more on heat. The heat of climate change. I'll just read this one and we'll get back to chat. The heat is a slap in the face, and it's what they call it's a form called guzzle. We have it spelled gozzle, but it's actually an ancient form, and it has repeating rhyming words, last words. Extreme heat is a slap in the face. Blaze, summer rays on steroids, unkind embrace. Kills more humans here than tornadoes, hurricanes combined. Raise hell, start a race. Deniers cripple while nature adapts. Decades of delay furthers the debase. Cities are double whammied. More pavement, craze to develop, loss of open space. Food, flora, fauna will all take a hit while we daze and continue to retrace. Where there's green, there's hope, but we can't take it for granted. Appraise, change, or more disgrace? What on earth will be left over for the grandkids? Let's amaze ourselves. May we act with grace. Thank you.
Those are all really good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask a question related to some of those poems?
Sure.
What originally motivated you to write about nature?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and it was a small farm, and it was back in the day when they weren't so big, and there was a lot of neighbors around you and everything. And I went to a one-room country school, so I played out. I had 3 older brothers, so I played outside by myself a lot. And I'm still writing about that farm. I haven't lived there forever, but anyway, it happened at a informative time in my life. As Willa Cather said, all the material you need to write, you learn by the age of 10 or something like that. I forget what she said exactly, but it was, it's just your formative years are really important to who you become. So, I had a lot of nature around me because we had pastures and groves and things to explore. So I guess that's where my love of nature comes from, the cosmos. And my dad showed me we would look at the stars and he'd show me what's out there, even though I was nearsighted and couldn't see most of the time, but I wanted to be with my dad and have him show me all this stuff. So
Yes.
yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, well, I was gonna say I remember doing that at my aunt's farm. It was like west of Lincoln. We would go out there, and on like Christmas Eve, we would go outside and stare at the stars, and there was no light pollution, which I wasn't used to, and you could just see everything. It was amazing. Yeah, and I've been writing about nature since forever because from a young age I've been very concerned about the environment. I loved like my parks and all the nature around my house, and I knew that it was in danger from a very young age, and it always was something that worried me. So that was built into my poems a lot, was that fear and anger and uncertainty about the natural world, but also the love for the natural world. It's something that I want to see preserved past my lifetime. And I also write a lot about Nebraska and the nature here specifically because this is where I've lived my whole life. I've lived in Bellevue since I was born, and it's something really important to me. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I think we both know that.
Yes.
And so I'd like to ask you, how do you advocate for nature? You may have already said most of it, but what's your
Yeah. Well, I talked a little bit about my civic engagement project. That's a big thing. I think just educating other people about, the natural world and how we can protect it is really important because I think a lot of people probably have interest in helping the environment or stopping climate change, but don't necessarily know where to start because it feels like such an overwhelming issue. So that's a lot of what I do. Like, I'm with a group called Omaha Students for Sustainability. That's a big part of my work. I'm the communications director there. So I'm trying to, create our newsletter and, make social media posts and create informational materials so that way people are able to really comprehend climate change and see what they can do about it. I think that's like the biggest thing I do. Oh, and also with young people, I really want to advocate for other young people and show other people my age, my peers, what we can actually do when we work together.
Yeah, that's very cool. I think it's really important for organizations to engage young people.
Absolutely.
And people like you are going to live through this climate change, and it could be pretty serious. Who are some of your writing heroes?
Oh, yes. I have a lot. Well, Mary Oliver, I read her poem, but just the love of nature that she expresses in her work is really incredible to me, and it always makes me want to appreciate the world around me more, which I think is incredible. And I also really like Walt Whitman because I think he similarly has like a deep appreciation for the world around him, which is something I really get from reading his poems, and it inspires me to do the same. I also love Ada Limon, who's the former U.S. Youth Poet, or not youth, just the general Poet Laureate. And I think her work has a lot of vivid imagery and good symbolism, so I really love her work. What about you?
Well, Rachel Carson is my hero, real hero.
Absolutely.
Silent Spring came out. She wrote that in 1972, I think. And she stood up. She was so brave. She stood up to the chemical company executives who just belittled her and her work. But she knew a lot about and did a lot of research about how chemicals are poisoning animals, including the bald eagle. Weren't poisoning the eagle so much as they were ingesting food that caused their eggs to be too soft or something, and they couldn't reproduce. So we almost lost the bald eagle. I'm fuzzy in all the details, but she was very brave and stood up to them, even though she was very sick at the time. So I remember when they used to spray towns with DDT, and and herbicide now is killing the good organisms in the soil, and it's just a madhouse. But she had a major impact and is one of my heroes. I do very much love Ada Limon and Mary Oliver. She's influenced my writing a lot. In fact, her book, Primitive, I think her first book is the one I just love the most, but she's got a lot of books now. Yeah, so it's important to have heroes, I think, and we can look up and try to emulate them in our own.
I also love that you pointed out Rachel Carson because she's someone whose poetry has made like a real, I mean, not poetry, but her writing and her work has made a real impact on the world. And I think that's something we both try to do. Do you think poetry can make a difference in the communities we live in our state, and the world?
Yeah, I really do. We kind of had this discussion this morning in my writers group, but writing is usually personal. And if you have writing that goes out into the world, you don't know what's going to happen to it when you send it out or somebody buys your book or whatever. Uh, Even though, like, for example, I grew up on a farm, but I was a kid once and I was trying to find my way. And that becomes universal. So the personal and the political can become universal if you get it out there, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I think that for me, poetry like is something that makes people feel and reminds them of why an issue is important, which is really necessary because a lot of times there's so much happening that like you may care about issues, but you forget like the emotion behind it and you forget like why you're fighting for things. And arts, especially poetry, can make that connection real again. And it can also make people, like you said, feel seen, like universal experiences. When you're finding your way and you have a poem about someone else who's doing the same thing, you feel seen and you feel heard, and it can start new conversations. And yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very important.
yeah, and I have to write. I mean, it's like I took a class to when I was employed at Wesleyan, Nebraska Wesleyan, but I was a horticulturist and I hadn't taken very many humanities. I didn't have many humanities credits in my degree at the university, but I started taking classes at Wesleyan because I got them free
Mhm.
as a full-time employee. And I wandered into a class. I had never written a poem, but I took a class with Bill Clefcorn, who was our state poet from, I forget when he started, but he passed away in 2011. It was a lifetime appointment. And anyway, I did stop writing after the class was over. So that, to me, an instructor or a teacher kind of guiding you. And he didn't guide you by saying, okay, number one, do this, writing a poem. Just said, he read a few poems and then he said, when you come to class on the next class, bring a poem you've written. And I felt a shiver go down my back. I had never written a poem. So anyway, so I started writing about what I knew. And that's just how you start. You start where you start. And he taught me that. Just keep going, because he had a gift for pointing out something that might work in my poems. So anybody's poem, it'd be a crappy poem. But he had that talent. So I was really lucky to have him as first teacher. How about you? Did you have a teacher that was influencing you and in your writing endeavors?
Yeah. I had my third grade teacher. I haven't gone to college yet. I'm sure there will be some lovely professors there, but my third grade teacher, she would let me write short stories in the back of my reading notebook, and she would give me the freedom to do that during class because she knew it was something I cared about and that would challenge me. And that kind of jump started my writing because she gave me the time and the space to pursue something that I was passionate about, and I will always be grateful for that.
Yeah, that's important, really.
Yeah.
Well, we're here to talk about plants. I might read plants of poetry. I might read just two more poems or so. Well,
Okay.
how are we doing on time? Well, let me read this one first. Where I am from. And that's always kind of a prompt that I give people. Sometimes I've been given it myself, like, where are you from? And then just go from there. So this is where I am from. I am from Big Blue Stem, Little Blue Stem, along roads in fall, waving purple, yellow, red. I learned from ditches, hillsides, remnant prairies, visualize the megafauna lost, watch for wings, hooves, paws that persist. I imagine all of those hills and flatlands covered, a deep-rooted, slender-stalked textile, Pawnee who trek now in vehicles from Oklahoma to their ancestral sites on the sandy banks of the Platte. It's flowed brown and diminished. In spite of debris and agrochem runoff, I haven't read this for a long time, sorry. The river is our lifeblood from narrow streams and bubbled up springs. Bald eagles nest along and sandhill cranes still migrate toward. When I stand along its banks with trees and wildlife, it's possible to forget all that cannot be undone. I am from immigrants who plowed, drained, and terraced, who made a life, made me who I am. Where the Pawnee were from is still here. Sacred sites that can be preserved, wildlife and soil restored. I believe we can all be better citizens of Earth as sites, ditches, corridors lift our spirits to the sun.
I love the line, I believe we can all be better citizens of the earth. That is so true and so well put.
Thank you.
I could read a poem now that is just about similarly being from the Midwest. Maybe I read and then you finish us off with that. Okay. This poem was actually inspired by this summer. I took a trip to New York and it just reminded me of how different it was from Nebraska and kind of how I was still a Midwest girl even though I was in New York. So here's what it's called If You Let Me Fly. I stride down sunlit trails, kicking gravel into the slick sky, tasting freedom in the gritty wind, and remembering that night of 10th Avenue madness, that New York City magic, bruising the pavement beneath my feet, gulping in hot, sweet air, and watching the signs turn bright white all the way. Walk, 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 girl, run, 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 as if the stoplights knew I was a Midwest girl not used to being limited. As if in this unforgiving city night, I'd made a trade with the timers saying, here, if you let me fly, I'll give you a piece of the joy blooming from my beating heart. I'll give you a piece of my wings.
Oh, nice.
That's about just, being from the Midwest, even when I'm far away. So,
yeah, I think sometimes we have to go somewhere else to really appreciate where we are.
yes, I agree.
Very good. I think I have another question for you.
Oh, okay.
So what did your peers think about when they hear you talking about the earth and the environment? Are they convinced that that's a thing they need to be worried about, or they appreciate your poetry for that, or what?
Yeah, I think my peers really connect to it because a lot of my poems, especially about my concern for the environment, is something that they all share. I know so many young people who are worried about our future and climate change. And I think when I share my poems, they will, let me know that that's something that they feel too. And they were able to hear their feelings and thoughts expressed, which I really love, knowing that my work was something universal and something that made people feel seen. And I think it is definitely a topic my peers connect with because we love the natural world despite the stereotypes that, we're on our phones and we never go outside. I think young people today really do care about nature and the natural world, and we want to see it preserved for generations.
Yeah, I agree. And that's great. because your plant talks, I think, are important that you do. And my own yard is quote unquote wildlife. It's a wildlife habitat for one thing. It's certified by Nebraska Wildlife.
Yay.
And which means it doesn't fit in with the normal landscape of my neighbors. And as a result, I got a weed notice. This is back when they had a weed board. Elected officials were on the weed board. But anyway, I got this weed notice, and I complied with the order to cut down anything in the city property part of my house. But they threatened to, mow down my whole yard. But I had a lot of native plants, so I wasn't about to do that. But anyway, so I complied with it. Well, when I got the second notice, I went through and I made an inventory of all the plants I had in my yard, and I sent them a letter with the scientific names, the common name and a scientific name, because that was my training in horticulture. And I said, these are not weeds, these are native plants. And native plants are not weeds. So they backed off and they didn't bother me.
Incredible.
And I think the city ordinance now, instead of reading, you shall have no worthless vegetation over 6 inches tall in your yard. That's so open to interpretation that now they allow for natural landscaping, which is great. So I've got a lot of tall grasses. I've got a lot of wildflowers and spots for, I don't chemicalize my lawn, and it doesn't fit in but with the neighbors, but I'm doing my little bit in this corner of the earth.
You're setting the trend.
I hope so, because I think every yard has room for plants, native trees. I've got lots of oak trees, which is the most important oak plant tree. It's the most important tree in Nebraska, I believe, because it hosts something like 400 species of orchids. Feed on their leaves or, poke around in the bark. And I know that Plant Nebraska has really done a great job of getting all those oaks going in the greenhouse and stuff. And so I'm going to come back to that sale and get some more trees and shrubs that they had. So, and Plant Nebraska is very important. You maintain a list of plants for this area, for areas, every area of Nebraska, like where does this do best, that you can look at.
Yes. Can we give a shout out to Plant Nebraska real quick? Thank you for hosting this and for having Twyla and I.
Yes, yes. And become a member, because there's so many things you will be able to do and support them that way.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that. We do have some questions in the chat if you're ready, or if you had another reading you wanted to do before we do that.
Why don't we do one more poem each? I'll just do a short one. It's the last poem in this, second to last poem in this collection, this section of my new book. This fragile, healing land. How fragile this land is, and how healing, that we might gather its bounty, be humbled by its opulent and sufficient nourishment. If we could only learn to inhale its pale breath, abandon ourselves to its fragmented song. See there, water, leaf, and feather, ribbons in the wind, the sun a copper disk at sunset. Let the wheel of your singular mind unwind. Imprint your body with each phase of the moon. Be open to the unexpected. Expect to be amazed. Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you.
Should we go to questions now?
Yeah.
Of course. I am happy to read them out for you. So I'll go back to the beginning here and we can start there. Victoria, this one's for you from Brock. He says, have you been in contact with the Intertribal Medicine Collective with the Lincoln Indian Center? It might be worth checking out based on your response to Twyla on writing to the original plants in Nebraska.
I have not, but I will have to look into that. It sounds like a good resource.
They are a wonderful group to work with. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out.
And Aaron said hello from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So we're international tonight.
Wow. Very cool.
Will says to Twyla, it's so great to see you again. Will from Hastings College is here tonight.
Yes, I will. I saw you. I see you now. Thank you. Yeah, I know Will through a program he ran for teachers and the going on the trail of the wagon river trails, I guess we called it.
Yeah, Will did ask, do you remember Purple Poppy Mallow and Big Blue Stem from the Platte River Trails?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you.
Another question, do either of you have a specific place in nature that has been especially inspiring to you and your poetry?
I definitely have one. I run cross country in the fall. I ran it all 4 years of high school, and we would have a meet at Pioneers Park every year. And in the fall, I just loved it. Just being outside with all my teammates in the trees and the hills and everything. I always felt so inspired after being there. So I think that place is really special to me in my work.
Yeah, I like Pioneers Park a lot. In fact, it's one of the first parks I explored after I got when I came to Lincoln as a kid, as in high school. But my place, I would say, was Spring Creek Prairie, down by Denton, and it's gosh, I don't know how many acres they have now, but it's all native grass and it's maintained. They've gotten rid of a lot of trees, in fact, and they burn it in patches every year, so it will renew the prairie, and they graze it. They do both grazing and patch burning, but it's a wonderful place, and you can almost forget you're close to a city, and depending where you are on the trails. It's lovely. You should come down and see it sometime, Victoria.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to look into it.
Thank you for that question.
Okay, Nancy asks, beyond buying your books and supporting your talent, how can we help you lead a movement to accept and promote a healthier environment?
I would say just spread the word about the environment. Share educational materials, like tell your neighbors about it. Like Twyla said, if you're the only one in your neighborhood who has a native garden, maybe tell your neighbors about what it is and encourage them to get started. I think just getting the word out there is really awesome. And then also joining environmental groups, like becoming a member of Plant Nebraska, or, I think the Sierra Club is pretty active here. There's lots of different groups you can join to get more involved.
Yeah, the Nebraska Wildlife Federation also does that kind of work. And I would say, it's great though. People want to buy our books. Thank you.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so you might want to private message us or something. Or if you friend me on Facebook, I'll put you on the list, or you can watch for it there. So
yeah, ditto. Friend me on Facebook.
Perfect. Okay, Jane asks, where do you like to write? Do you write every day? And do you ever suffer from writer's block? And if so, how do you get past it?
Well, I don't believe in writer's block. I believe everybody can write. It may be more work sometimes, but you have to sit your butt in the chair, as they say, and just write, because you wait for the muse to get. everything, the stars line up and you get, your inspiration. If you wait to get inspiration, you won't do much writing. You need to do your work. And so sometimes it feels like a lot of work trying to get started, but I use prompts and other things like that. And I have a favorite place to write, and it's right here. I'm looking out at windows in my backyard and that's what I like doing when I write. I like to look out into nature, but I have friends who write in basements with their, nothing around them, and they're fine writers. So everyone's different about where they write. But well, how about you?
Yeah. I love to write at my desk where I'm sitting. I have a giant window, so letting the light in and seeing, my front yard is great, like Twyla said. I wish I wrote every day. Unfortunately, I'm a full-time student, so time is limited, but I try to write as much as possible. And I think, like Twyla said, it's really important to just keep writing. Yeah, like writer's block, maybe you're not always inspired, maybe you're tired, but I think it's still important to try to express yourself, get a few words on the page, because you're never going to get better if you keep just waiting for inspiration to strike. You have to really, be disciplined about it and enjoy it and do it regularly, because if it's something you love, it's important to pursue it.
Absolutely.
Ardith just had a comment. She said, I didn't know how to get started with native plants, and a friend said, just throw some seeds out there and see what happens. And some came up, and I have groups of waves of colors. So that was fun.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yes. And Sustain UNL asked, they said they're proud UNL Sustainability Club here. Where will you be going to University, Victoria?
Well, shout out to Sustain UNL. They're great. I love them. But I'm undecided right now for university. I'm still waiting to hear back on some admissions decisions, but I've applied to a lot of schools and we'll see what happens. UNL is definitely in the cards. It's up there. So yeah.
All right. Perfect. Well, we'll be holding out hope over at UNL.
Yes.
All right. If there are any other questions, that's to the end of the questions that are there. So this is probably your last chance if you want to put something in the comment. Otherwise, I will let Victoria and Twyla kind of close us out here.
Okay. Twyla, do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, I would just say get out into nature, take walks on prairies if you can, or where there's a lot of native plants. I know there is a prairie at Pioneer Park too, and you probably run right through it. This slope where they also sled in the winter, and yeah, it's a wonderful place just to be out into nature and experience it. I think anymore, especially young people are like you said, Victoria, they're on their phones and on social media, but I think the more you connect with nature, the more you will appreciate it and then want to advocate for it. So learning the plants, that's another thing. I first learned about native plants in a class at UNL. I took a landscape design class with Richard Sutton, and he said, well, you can use native plants, and I'm just thinking, what? I'd never heard that before. I grew up on a farm and we probably had a pasture that was native plants, but grasses. But anyway, he said, yeah, and we had to do a booklet with all the plants that are native that might be useful in yards, and I have a lot of them in my yard. So and I didn't want to stop learning. I went out to the ditches and the roadsides, and there they were all growing, and it was just great. I wanted to learn more. So be curious, as they say.
I will echo that. And I would say just appreciate the world around you, just notice things. I think that's a big thing for writers, but it's also a big thing for humans. Like it just makes you more human, realizing everything that's happening around you in the natural world. And yeah, I also agree with Twyla. Go outside, just be outside, enjoy it. Even though it's cold, bundle up and go see the snow. It's definitely worth it. And I think it brings so much joy into your life. So yeah.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much to both Victoria and Twyla. I think this was a inspiring and I think a night of respite for some folks. It sounds like it was a good conversation that kind of was a balm for their souls. So thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate having you. Everyone should know that this was recorded, so we'll be sending out the recording tomorrow, so you can relive it over and over again and experience these wonderful poets. And don't forget that we have a final plant talk next week, and everything you need is at plantnebraska.org. So thank you again, Victoria and Twyla, and I hope you both, all of you, have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.